It's Thursday, November 4, 1999. I'm talking to Charlie Pilzer at his home in Virginia.
Air show?
Hello, is this Charlie?
Yeah.
Charlie, this is Michael Scully in Texas.
Hey, how are you?
How are you?
Good.
Are you able to talk?
Yeah. I'll have to sort of interrupt myself because I'm actually in the middle of dumping something, but that's okay.
Okay, as long as it works. I mean, just let me know if you run into a problem. I appreciate it. I guess first thing I should ask you is I'm doing a lot of interviews, so I to keep track of them, I tape them where it's okay. So.
Hang on 1 second.
Yeah.
I told you I'll keep sort of getting distracted off.
That's okay.
All right, so to keep track of these things, what are you doing?
I tape record them where people. Okay, great. So, what is it you do? Now, you got a mastering studio? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do CD mastering and audio editing and audio restoration work.
I see. Okay. And how long have you been affiliated with the Folk Alliance per se? Since the inception, or?
Well, I mean, as a member or just involved?
I guess as a member. I guess your earliest involvement at all, even just as a member.
Well, actually, I was not one of the original members. I didn't get involved till a couple of years after it got rolling.
Mm-hmm.
I guess probably got drawn in the third year by Jeff Warner.
Right. Okay. I know Jeff. I mean, I've talked to him quite a bit. Let's see. Now, the first conference. What's that?
It's all his fault.
That's all. I think. Let's see. The first conference I went to was Phoenix. I think Tucson.
Uh-huh.
And you were in by then. I guess that would have.
There.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I go to Arizona. I go to the desert, and it rains for 4 days.
That's right. I remember that vividly. Now, do you know Randy Pitts?
Randy?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're
Okay.
on board together.
Right, I thought so. Now, Randy's a good friend of mine. We met in California. I was living there before coming to Texas for many, many years, and I met Randy at the Freight, where he booked the club. And Randy and I have roomed together at all the conferences I've gone to, except for that Tucson conference, where we roomed together in Boston, and we roomed together last year, and we're scheduled to room together in Cleveland.
Oh, okay.
He's a good buddy of mine, and
He's a good guy.
yeah. So I guess, now what capacities have you had? You ended up having official capacities. You were on the board.
I was on the board of directors for 4 years. I was the treasurer for 2 years, I think. Maybe it was 3 years.
Okay.
I think it was 2 years.
Right. Okay. And is that one session on the board or two? I don't know how long
Well, sort of one. I was appointed for a year, and then I was elected for 3 years.
3-year term. Okay. Okay. Well, I guess why don't we start with what prompted me to pluck your name out of the infinite variety of names was that peer group meeting last time around, which I guess you remember.
Uh-huh.
And you said you'd been asked by Phyllis to initiate a discussion about the place for people who like traditional music or the role of traditional music. Why don't you state it?
It's more confusing than that.
Good.
All right. I mean, you've been to all these different conferences.
Right.
What does the Folk Alliance mean to you?
As a member who...
If you were going to try and explain the Folk Alliance to somebody, what would you explain that it was?
Okay. I say that and I know this is probably not what it wants to be, but I say that the Folk Alliance is in largest part a trade group for acoustic musicians and those affiliated with them in the business.
Well, interesting enough, internally, I think that's how the Folk Alliance may see itself.
Interesting. Uh-huh.
Externally, it's many of the members of the Folk Alliance don't see it that way.
What do you think they see?
Everybody has their own view.
Okay.
One of the things about the Folk Alliance is Folk Alliance does not define folk.
Yeah, I understand
Very purposely. It's self-defined. If you consider yourself folk, you can be in.
Uh-huh.
And that's an important principle. So what happens is different people in the Folk Alliance, different constituencies, have their own axes to grind. And of course, because they're all folkies, they tend to be reasonably activist and reasonably vocal about a lot of the stuff they do.
Yeah.
So the problem is the traditionalists have always felt overwhelmed by the inordinate numbers of singer-songwriters.
Right.
And they've always sort of argued that, well, the Folk Alliance doesn't really care about them.
Yeah.
In fact, it's really quite the opposite, that the Folk Alliance, I think, does a lot to help keep traditional music in, and, particularly because it's an interest of some of the board members and, other, and more specifically of Phyllis.
Right. Can I ask you a question? Is that music that's playing in the background something you're doing for work?
Yes.
Oh, okay, fine. I just, okay. I can.
Sorry, I got behind, and actually, I forgot you were going to call.
Okay, that's all right.
I will be done in 40 minutes.
It doesn't. If you if you can keep talking, that's fine with me. If not,
it'd be better for me if we talked in 40 minutes.
I'll be happy to call you back. Want me to do that? Want me to make it 45 or 50? Would that work?
Yeah, 45 would be great.
Okay, I'll do that.
I will be here.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Air show.
Hi, Charlie. Michael Scully. How are you?
I'm done now.
Okay, good.
So that should work much better for you.
Great. Okay. I played back the little we had done, and the music really wasn't coming through because I've got but I don't know. I was starting to worry that it was going to overpower us.
Right.
Anyway, we were talking about. Let's see. We started talking about that peer group session.
Right.
And I think you were telling me how it came about.
Right. So I'll tell you a little bit about. Well, I guess part of the thing is I guess I should know what you're really interested in. You want to just hear my rambling?
Well, no, I'd like to. Yeah, let's do that. I'll kind of direct it to areas I'm interested in, but I kind of want to let you go where you.
Here's the thing. What we were starting on was talking about sort of what the traditionalists were looking for and kind of what I had been asked to do.
Right.
The traditionalists feel that they're greatly overshadowed by the singer-songwriters.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly in number of people who are at the conference, that's probably true. And in a way, a big part of the conference is a big networking thing. And in fact, if you work in the field of folk, it's a good place to get a bunch of work done.
Right.
And anybody who says otherwise just isn't being honest.
Okay.
In one's humble opinion, or not so humble opinion, as the case may be. Excuse me. That said, that the traditionalists typically have bitched, oh, we're not getting enough attention, that nobody takes us seriously, that nobody takes traditional music seriously. And in fact, I think it's quite the opposite, that the Folk Alliance takes traditional music very seriously, and that people who are really honestly interested in the music, a lot of the more serious contemporary musicians,
mm-hmm.
Pay a great deal of attention to traditional music.
Okay.
Despite what the traditionalists say. Anyway, what Phyllis had proposed was a separate, you could think of it as a regional conference that would be a traditionalist, a conference with a focus, or a set of workshops where the focus would be on traditional music,
right?
The singer-songwriter stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I had sort of been led to bring in.
Yeah.
To bring in to the conference.
Right. And I think the thing that sticks out in my mind from that session on that point, I don't know if it struck you as the most vehement, but I remember Mark Moss saying, hey, why do we have to have a separate group? That sort of yields the floor in a sense. Isn't that what this group is supposed to be about? Why don't we just kind of, assert our space within the Folk Alliance? Do you recall that?
I did say that.
Yeah.
Which is pretty self-consistent with things Mark has said before. That's not an unusual thing for Mark to say.
Right.
And, I don't think he's necessarily wrong.
Okay. Now, where did it? I know there's going to be a traditional showcase or a traditional night. It's vague to me, at least, in the program, as it's announced for 2000. What's been done? What came out of this?
Out of
that peer group. Where did you go from there? Did anything happen from that in specific terms?
Nothing specifically yet.
Okay.
It's sort of what we were looking for in that particular session was to see what people thought of having a separate conference. Basically, they were pretty negative about it.
Yeah, that's what I recall. Yeah.
That doesn't mean there won't be a separate conference.
Mm-hmm.
There are many reasons. There are many arguments. There are many reasons why having yet another weekend would be a good thing.
Right.
And it will very likely happen in the fall of 2001. I'm sorry, fall of 2000.
I see. Okay.
But I'm not organizing that,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know where the plans on that exist at the moment. You would need to talk to Phyllis specifically about that.
Right.
One reason I was asked to sort of lead the discussion was Jeff Davis has run that session for many years, and he thought, and some others thought, that perhaps it would be good to have somebody else do it.
Okay. And that's why. I mean, it's like, oh, that's Jeff. He's the traditional nag. Let's not listen to him.
He's a traditional nag, you know. It's just the idea that they thought maybe it would be good if somebody else did it for
Right.
you know, just to have a different style or something.
Let me ask you this, you said earlier that the Alliance quite purposefully does not define folk, which is something that I knew, and I want to return to that. Does it must muck around with definitions of traditional at all?
Nope.
Not at all.
They tend to say the folk alliance, the culture of the folk alliance is such that it doesn't define.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, it you know, I cannot remember whether it's an actual board policy, whether there's actual board statement that says it doesn't define the stuff, or if that's just the way they do it.
Right.
But no, traditional is whatever, you know, the traditional is whatever traditional thinks it is.
Okay. Okay. You asked at the peer group session when you were kind of exploring attitudes about a separate meeting, and I'm paraphrasing you. You may be.
Hang on one second.
Yeah.
Hi. Okay. I understand. Probably. Well, you could listen to worse. Have fun. I'll see you tomorrow. Sorry.
Okay, it's all right. You in throwing open the question of a separate meeting.
Hang on 1 second, Michael.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. You asked the question at that peer group session if, and I'm paraphrasing you, so correct me if you remember it differently, but
If you wrote it down, you probably know it better than what I did.
yeah, what I am looking at notes, and what I did write down were, and this was posed as a question, not as a truism, but you said, you know, would there be a common set of values among people who'd bother to attend a Folk Alliance traditional music gathering? Do you recall anything along those lines?
No, did I say that? That's a pretty good question.
Yeah. Okay.
Excellent question.
It was a good question. That's why it made it into my notes, and it made it into this interview. I thought it was such a good question, but I'm gathering that you've never gotten any answers or reached any conclusions on the point from.
No, we did. I mean, we certainly talked about it then. I actually don't. I have to be honest. I don't remember asking that question. Several times. I mean, many times. I do lots of things kind of not off the cuff, but not, you know, of the moment.
Well, when you talked about this with Phyllis or Jeff Davis or whomever, did you ever discuss that issue, whether there is a...
Probably did, which is probably why the question came up.
But do you have any memory of whether or not, you know, what types of values you thought might be out there among traditional music lovers?
Interestingly enough, no, we didn't.
Okay.
It was more to see, you know, did remember one of the problems though when you're asking this question at something like a traditional peer group is that you're already you're already speaking to the chosen.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
So a self-selected audience.
Mm-hmm.
And that they already have something in common.
Yeah.
Just by nature of being there. And what they have in common is, one is that they define themselves as traditional in some sort.
Yes.
Or either as a traditional artist or someone who's interested in traditional material.
Right.
Second of all, they self-select in the sense that they are interested enough in what they're talking about to actually be there.
Yes.
Which is a pretty critical point.
Yeah.
And my guess is that virtually everybody who was at that session would probably make the effort, if they could afford to do so, to actually be at the at such a traditional conference.
Right. What is it the folks who were concerned, what do they want done beyond the sort of omnibus complaints? Well, we're overshadowed by the singer-songwriters. There's not enough emphasis on tradition. What are some of the things you heard people wanted done?
Basically, I think they're looking for like an affirmative action program.
By which you mean what?
That the focal lines say in the big showcases that they make the reach-out effort to actually find traditional artists and promote traditional artists in the showcases.
Right.
That they see the focal lines as being a way of preserving and furthering traditional arts rather than contemporary folk arts.
Okay.
See, for me, I float in kind of both worlds. I don't see the two as being competitive. There are those who do.
Yeah.
And that at one time, what we call traditional now was contemporary.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that the only reason why all the traditional songs seem so good is all the bad ones got left behind.
Right. That's a great point. I like that. But yeah, definitely, it was once.
That's a very critical thing. I mean, that's a very critical thing with regards to what you. If you ask me, if you look at what someone calls traditional now, what is traditional?
Yeah.
At some point, whatever is traditional now was new.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. I read, and I can't remember where because I wanted to go out and find it again, but I read a very compelling piece by someone who said that, all of the complaints heard now about how bad Nashville has gotten and what is called, contemporary country hat acts are going to sound quaint and archaic in 50 years as people will have plucked out the classic country gems from this current genre of Nashville music.
Absolutely.
And I read it and I smiled and I said, the guy's probably right, time will tell. And he said, he ended the article, as I recall, by saying, trust me, it will happen.
Yep.
And that's someone with perspective, perhaps. And it's and I thought of it, it's very close to what you just said about
I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
I mean, it already is true.
Yeah.
But I don't know quite what I don't know quite what the angle of where you're looking to do your studies.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
but I mean, if you look at the folk lines as an organization, once again, as an organization, it's driven partially by its executive staff, partially by its board of directors.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much as a member of membership, but as kind of an organizational directive.
Right.
And there's a whole lot of philosophy behind what that means.
Yeah.
But as an organization, I think it's very supportive of traditional folk arts.
You said to me that the organization internally does see itself as a trade group for the acoustic music industry.
I certainly, some people do.
Okay.
I mean, what else would it be?
Well, I think that's clearly what the conference is about. As you said, it's a great place to do business. And I think one of the things is that a lot of the people who are interested in traditional music, and tell me what you think of this. I think maybe they don't want to do business in the same sense as contemporary singer-songwriters who want recording and touring careers.
What makes you think that?
I'm just supposing that. I don't know. Do you think it's untrue?
I don't think that's true.
Okay. Okay. I'm not sure that those who want to hear local traditions of the type that might be presented as a showcase as emblematic of whatever region the conference is taking place in care about national touring or recording contracts. What they want to hear is simply, the valorization of a local tradition, and they want those musicians to get a stage for just one night. And those musicians might not be people who are interested in recording careers in the same sense as an acoustic singer-songwriter. I guess
it's not the same sort of career, not the same sort of business.
Mm-hmm.
They may not even know that it's the same thing, but preservation is a career too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these guys are there. Some of them are performers. They just happen to perform traditional material.
Yeah.
There are certain performers who have been disparaged for being imitative. Not only do they do the traditional material, but they try to do the traditional material as close as they can to the recording they got it from.
Right.
That they are interjecting nothing new.
Yeah.
There are those who, but there are people who write about it.
Yeah.
There are people who make recordings, and they have recordings of traditional material, and they want to have, recordings available.
Right.
No, they don't want to do a national tour. They don't want to do, house concerts or whatever, anything else the same way the singer-songwriter does. That doesn't mean they're not in the business.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Now, have you been involved in the showcase selection process at any time?
Indirectly.
How do you mean?
Well, the showcase selection committee is responsible to the board of directors.
Okay.
And certainly, when I was on board of directors, I was responsible in helping determine policy for the showcase committee. But I have never been on the showcase committee.
Right. Now, is that policy written down?
Sure.
Oh, okay.
All board policies are written down.
Okay. Okay. Now, how much?
The showcase committee is given fairly explicit directions as to what the showcase should be, but not what the showcase should contain.
Okay. And in terms of what it should be, how would you paraphrase those directions?
Okay. All right. All right. I actually cannot answer that question now.
Okay.
Because, every year the board tinkers with the showcase.
Okay.
I can only tell you, at one point it was something on the order of, it will be an entertaining presentation of the breadth of the folk alliance.
Okay.
I don't know what it is now.
Okay. Which doesn't tell you much beyond entertaining. Well, entertaining in breadth, I guess it tells you that. Was there a lot of talk of which you were aware about the need to balance the showcases between what common folk would call traditional versus non-traditional or singer-songwriter stuff?
There's endless discussions about the showcase.
Uh-huh. Okay, now you mean within the board and within the showcase committee?
Here's the thing. I can't really tell you it's inappropriate to discuss board discussions.
Okay.
Have you ever served on the board of directors?
I have, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then you're well aware of the policy that generally what is discussed outside of the board of directors are the results of a board of directors discussion, but the discussions are not discussed.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
That's fine. That's fine. Let me then shift a little bit here. The avoidance of a definite.
You didn't ask me my opinion.
Okay, and okay, that's fine. Why don't we go back then to your opinion?
You did, yeah. I mean, I have an opinion about the showcases.
Okay.
I don't think the folk alliance should do formal showcases.
Okay, and why is that?
Because you can't win.
Uh-huh.
No matter what you present, someone's going to be unhappy.
Mm-hmm. Is there a need to win? Why don't you just present a bunch of stuff anyway and then let everyone be unhappy and everyone be happy about something and unhappy about something else?
But why have big formal showcases like that? It's a big expense.
Uh-huh.
And in fact, most of the private showcases do the job as well, if not better.
Okay. I think that's a compelling point. Have you ever gotten any feedback or any sense that a showcase really made a difference to any artist, traditional, non-traditional, any type, to their career? And I mean a formal showcase. I think informally I've heard of some instances, but I'm thinking about the formal showcase.
You know, I don't know if I know the answer to that.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is, I think just being on the showcase isn't sufficient to make a change. But if you're on a showcase and a lot of other things, and you're doing a lot of other things, the showcase may have been germane to helping people along.
Yeah, okay. Okay, let me ask you.
You know, that some people have certainly gotten bookings and stuff out of doing a formal showcase, but it doesn't mean they wouldn't have gotten bookings if they had done some other sort of showcase.
Right, right. I want to turn to this avoidance of the definition of folk. Now, I appreciate the danger of a definition, and, you know, what is folk goes on in these circles all the time. I would think that's clearly a place where you couldn't make anybody happy. But has there ever been a push for a definition of which you're aware, and what came of it, or any expressed unhappiness about the lack of a definition?
Oh, I'm sure. They're folkies.
Okay. I guess I'm talking, though, about stuff that you've become aware of, and not necessarily reference debates within the board, but just pushes from the membership.
Oh, I'm sure people talk about that all the time.
Okay.
I'm sure it's a constant topic of discussion.
Okay, but no explicit...
No, people have explicitly tried. People have tried to put stuff in the newsletter about it, and it's, you know, and occasionally people get trapped without knowing they've been trapped.
How do you mean? I don't follow that.
You know, that all of a sudden they're discussing, you know, right, the reason it's not discussed, it becomes a meta discussion.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
In other words, rather than being a discussion about anything substantial, it's a discussion about discussions.
Okay.
I mean, it's like a waste of time.
Right.
So why talk about it?
Okay.
Who cares?
Okay.
If you want to be folk, you can be folk.
Right.
At least that's my take on it.
Okay.
And that's kind of why it never gets defined. I mean, it's like you can spend a lot of time not defining it, and then you're still not going to capture everything.
Right. Right. Well,
I mean, the truest sense, you know, the old joke. I can't remember which performer I've seen say this, or I've seen several. You know, well, it's all folk music to me. I ain't never seen a cow sing it.
yeah, I've heard Louis Armstrong, Bill Brunzi, and Muddy Waters.
Right, there you go.
That's it, yeah.
There you go.
All right. And there's been some oddball things I've seen in private showcases that I would call folk, except for the fact that it was there, so what the hell.
Like what?
Oh, boy, what was his name? I liked him a lot. His name was Chris. I think it was Chris. He did essentially a theatrical piece that sounded like,
Is that
is that it?
I think so.
Played some jazz in the background, had a woman singer behind him doing a lot of scat, did a lot of talking and raps.
Kind of a stringy-haired looking guy.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, he's they had a group that they used to call Stark Raving Chandler.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Hey, for Poetry Slam folk?
I liked the guy. I liked the guy a lot. I mean, as I say, it's just not something that would have occurred to me. But yeah, I liked the guy a lot. I was happy he was there.
That was beat poetry. Is 1950s beat poetry folk?
Well, yeah, and he was somewhat akin to that, I thought, with a little bit of hip hop built in.
There you go.
To bring it up. I didn't worry about it at the moment. It was great theater. It was theater. I wouldn't put it on as a record and say I'm going to listen to some music now. It was a bit of theater. If it came to town, I'd say to my wife, let's go. But would I think of it as the Folk Alliance? Probably not. But I didn't care.
I think that was Chris Stark.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't dredge it up now, and it wouldn't be. I don't think he's in the book because it was a private deal.
He was guerrilla of the most guerrilla sort.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he walked in from the back of the room. He hopped out of the audience. That's where he started coming in. But anyway, we talked earlier about the purposes of the alliance, and you said to me the alliance does see itself internally as a sense of trade group for the acoustic music industry.
Well, it's an advocate.
Okay.
It may be a better way to put it.
Okay. Now, have you heard expressions of different purposes or claims of different purposes?
Have you?
I don't think that I have. I don't think that I've heard any, quite honestly.
To a lot of members, the Folk Alliance is an annual party.
Okay.
I mean, it depends. Here's the thing that's unique to me about the Folk Alliance conference, about the Folk Alliance as an organization.
Okay.
And it's very different than where it started. I mean, I'm sure you sort of read what some of the original history or talked to people about what the original history behind the Folk Alliance.
I've read it. I'm actually gonna talk to the Weissmans next if they're willing. I want to go back to them. I've been, I don't know how much.
Who have you talked to before me, or am I the first?
Just Phyllis is the first, and Randy informally a lot. I've done a lot of my time. I've been exploring multiple avenues, and I've spent a lot of my time talking with the folks at Rounder Records as another aspect of this. But a distinctly different aspect of it, because I want to talk about how they straddle the worlds of putting out traditional records, putting out contemporary records, where their promo efforts go, things like that.
Okay, here's my understanding.
Okay.
Originally, the Weissman's idea was that the Folk Alliance was going to be an organization of organizations. The concept of individual members sort of didn't go into the equation.
Okay.
And that what the Folk Alliance turned into was fantastically more successful and bigger than I think anything Clark and Elaine had in mind.
Right.
They did a tremendous service without knowing what it was they had fostered.
Sure.
And it was their idea. I mean, there's no question it was their idea to get a bunch of folk organizations together. In the original organizational meeting, I believe, the one in Malibu, I believe that invitations were only extended to other folk organizations.
I think it's true. Phyllis sent me the minutes of that, and they're interesting reading.
Right.
Because everything, there's summaries of what everybody said throughout the whole thing were written down, which is impossible now.
Right. And so that, the reality of what the Folk Alliance is now, it's unique. It's the only conference that I know of in the United States that encompasses such a breadth of the acoustic music industry.
Yeah.
I mean, where else can you go where you get performers, you get presenters, you get folk organizations, you get people who sponsor song circles, you have record companies, you have media people, now you're trying to get suppliers, people who, you have, people who sell guitars. Where else can you go for 4 days where that's the whole thing?
Right.
I mean, what other annual meeting has all of those elements in it? I don't know of any others.
Yeah, you're right. Now,
and that to me is the real value of the Folk Alliance.
Has that turned anybody off? Does anybody think it's just gotten too hyped up, too showbiz?
Absolutely.
Okay.
There are those who think that it ought to be held at some summer camp somewhere, and everybody should be sleeping in tents or bunks.
Uh-huh.
And there are those who think there shouldn't be any, electric instruments shouldn't be allowed.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are those who think if you don't do your own material, it shouldn't be allowed.
Really? Intriguing.
And there are those who want it more contemporary, and then, which means that if you have enough people kind of pushing, it's probably about the right balance.
Right, but it's interesting. They're playing out the same debates that got played out historically. It sounds like Bob Dylan at Newport in 1965. It's the same arguments are going on.
But now you got the Newport people coming to this conference.
Yeah. But they're different Newport people, of course. They're very different Newport people.
No, they're some of the same people.
You mean the current Newport board?
Oh, no. Well, they're coming, too.
Yeah, that's what I meant. The current Newport organization is very different people.
The 1965 board, too.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's true. Can I go back a little bit? If you want to do this, how did you get involved with folk music? I'm interested in personalities, too, here. People who, just folk music activists, which, by virtue of your service, you are one.
All right, I can I believe it or not, I actually know seminal instances of how I got tied into folk music.
Well, great.
They're basically three pretty seminal occasions, which is how much it struck me. Right. Farther back, my background was, when I was growing up, I was a classical music nerd.
Can I ask how old you are so I get a context here?
48.
Okay, you're 3 years older than me. All right.
So, growing up as a classical music nerd, that was kind of where my life was when I was in high school.
Right.
And when I went off to school, so I abandoned music, I went off to study engineering, where I discovered three things. What I discovered about engineering was that the classes were dull, the professors were dull, and the students were dullest. And after a while, I decided I don't belong here. And so I was in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And if you look at the timing, 1970 was a great time to be in Ann Arbor, Michigan. It was a fantastic time to be there. And so I dropped out and wound up re-enrolling in the School of Music, studying classical music. And when I was, and what is interesting is when I was going to school in the early 70s at the School of Music at the University of Michigan, folk music hadn't been invented. Ethnomusicology as a field really didn't quite exist yet. It was still music history.
Yeah.
And there were some quaint people who were studying, ethnic music, but, if it wasn't from, like, sub-Saharan Africa or from the remotest regions of Indonesia or China, it didn't really impinge. The concept of Appalachian folk song being something someone would study was not part of the School of Music.
Okay.
There were certainly fledgling folklore programs, but even folklore programs didn't exist much before the 60s, as I recall.
That's correct, yeah.
And so the very first work in ethnomusicology was done, I guess, by Hood out at UCLA in, the early 60s?
That I don't know.
Something like that. The folklore came in around the same time. So at the time I went to school, folklore, if it existed at all, was a part of cultural anthropology, and kind of a sideline at that. And unless you went to a really forward-thinking school, perhaps something like Harvard, which there is a folklore program, but a small one,
right,
or UCLA, folk hadn't been invented. The fact that there were people out there and doing it didn't make a lot of difference. The fact that the Lomaxes had been out recording for years, and the Warners had been doing stuff, and the folk music, traditional folk music in America was published in the early 70s. This is sort of the start of the rediscovery of folk music following the folk scare.
Right.
Of the early 60s.
Right.
So folk music in the 60s was folks making music. But it hadn't been formalized or anything like that. So here I am, folk music, here I am, classical music nerd at the University of Michigan. So a friend of mine, says, hey, why don't you come folk dancing? One of the various forms of folks doing folk was international folk dancing, which in the late 60s and the early 70s had become very popular. I don't know if you were familiar with it.
Yeah, I do. I am. Okay.
Are you a folk dancer?
No, but I'm familiar with it. I remember events.
All right. So in the 70s, you would have 150 people a night at a folk dance in Ann Arbor.
Okay.
And it was sort of like the thing to do. So my friend dragged me. And drag is a really good description of the word to a folk dance. Well, the dancing was okay. The music was really interesting. Music was like stuff I had never ever heard. What is this stuff? To me, folk music was Simon Garfunkel and Joan Baez and Judy Collins.
Right.
That was about as far as folk music went.
Right.
The idea of traditional stuff hadn't really occurred to me. I had heard some bluegrass, and that just seemed like a form of country music. It's hard to be in college in the 70s and not have heard some folk music.
Right. Okay.
But the next thing that happened was that, as you may know, in Ann Arbor, even to this day, there is a club called the Ark.
The Ark. Okay.
Run by David and Linda Siglin. And they would probably be good people for you to talk to, too.
Okay.
They started the Ark in the late 60s. And one of my friends says, hey, there's this fiddle player down at the Ark, and you got to go see him. So I went down to the Ark, thinking, well, maybe only weirdos go there, but I went down. It was a very nice place. Actually, it was not such a nice place. It was just somebody's house. But it was, lots of cool people, and they had this great guy who was playing this really wonderful fiddle music and kind of tapping his feet at the same time. They had a piano player. And that was Jean Carignan. It actually was one of the last times he played. He's Quebecois fiddle player from Montreal.
Okay.
And he stopped playing in the early 70s because he went deaf. But he was quite an amazing guy to see, and here was a whole other side of folks making folk music, the likes of which I had never known. And he really intrigued me. And, I started going back to the Ark and seeing other sort of things and learning a whole lot more about folk music than I ever knew. But actually, I still didn't know anything about folk music, and I wasn't really making any folk music myself, although there was a little international band. I was starting to learn some stuff about playing, music from places that weren't the U.S., but didn't really know very much about it. Didn't have much of an understanding. But I was buying recordings, sort of studying recordings, and kind of figuring out what I could about it. And that sort of went along, and I got burned out on music school and burned out on music, as many music school grads do. My degree is in music theory, something that has virtually no practical application. Actually, I'm not sure it has any practical applications. So like most music school grads, I wound up programming computers.
Okay.
I'm still going to international folk dancing. And I got invited to a party. And at this party, it was 19... pretty sure it was 1977. It was like May 28th or something like that. It was like the Tuesday after Memorial Day, or the Monday after Memorial Day. And I went to this party and met tons of people who played all kinds of traditional music in the Washington area.
Mm-hmm.
And I just sort of tumbled in with them. And that's sort of been my life ever since.
Interesting.
So I sort of came about it late, and it's not because I heard it in my home, because my parents still don't understand it.
Uh-huh.
And it's not because I grew up in a traditional community. I grew up in a suburban community of Washington, D.C. I lived 3 miles from where I grew up. It's not because my uncle played fiddle, because none of my relatives, take that back, one relative was a concert pianist.
Right.
That was the only musical relative that I know of.
And what's your musical? What are your tastes run to now and then? What do you listen to? Are you a blues fan, bluegrass fan, everything? Traditional music, singer-songwriter.
There's not much that I don't. I actually have pretty wide-ranging tastes, which are really good at my job.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It means I like almost everything.
Right.
If I was going to put something on, I don't know that I'd say... There's a big part of me that likes really traditional stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a big fan of actually a lot of reissued material.
Right.
I like a lot of that. I like a lot of sort of contemporary... Well, no, actually, I don't know if it's contemporary, because I can think of stuff I'm not so... that I'm not so fond of. I like a lot of instrumental stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly spend a lot of time listening to all kinds of international stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of traditional English and Irish music. I've played Scandinavian music for years and years and years. I've toured a lot with a band from Scandinavia.
What do you play?
I play bass and I play piano.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I played for contra dances, traditional dances. I played all over the U.S.
Okay.
Toured a lot with that. I produced almost 40 records.
Ah. Traditional type stuff?
Well, not some traditional, some less than traditional.
Mm-hmm.
It tends to all be acoustic.
I see. Okay.
Of various sorts. But there's been a lot of sort of chamber folk music, if you wish.
Okay.
Kind of that funny blend between what might be classical music and what might be Celtic music and what might be New Age music.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, I have a sense, I have a sound in my head as you say that, but I don't know that I know anything like that per se.
Right. I mean, what do I listen to? I don't know. I mean, we have hundreds of, I have thousands of LPs and hundreds of CDs,
Right.
And I listen to almost anything someone talks about.
Yeah.
I'm not as fond of contemporary songwriters as I am of more traditional stuff. I have a low tolerance for whining. And I have a low tolerance for bad songs.
Randy says, Randy invented a genre. Maybe he didn't invent it, but he's the first one who used these words to me. He said, "Oh, let's go hear some songs of personal indulgence."
Oh, that's a good one.
That's wonderful. We've always used that ever since.
That's good. I mean, some of those performers are really quite good. A lot of them are not.
Mm-hmm.
I challenge them to write a song without using the word I.
Let me shift a little bit now. In a lot of people's minds, I guess coming out of the 60s, the term folk music is associated with something political. Now, has that been part of your experience in the folk music world? Maybe you don't even agree with it, but yeah, I mean, I think you would have to acknowledge the connection that many people make.
Well, it depends. It depends. You use two conflicting things in one sentence.
Okay, go ahead.
I agree with you. Many people consider folk music as connected with political.
Okay.
But mostly they're not folkies.
Mostly they're not folkies.
Right.
Okay.
I think true folkies know that folk music is wider than just that. Political implications is one kind of folk music.
Right.
And that, a number of high-profile folkies, well-known folk artists who came up, sort of the initial folk artists, of who, the first one that pops to mind would be Pete Seeger.
Right.
Or Joan Baez.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly their music is tagged political.
Yes.
And Pete certainly would say his music is political.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly Woody Guthrie was.
Mm-hmm.
There's an argument that all blues is political music, too.
And there's an interesting point there, because there's two types of political. One is the overtly political song, the early Dylan songs with which he gained fame, or the Phil Oakes song. Those are protest songs, and there's the other argument that all music of the dispossessed, the non-commercial, the ignored.
The political statement.
Right.
Yep.
Right. I mean, do you personally, and speak totally personally again, I'm trying to get at people who are activists. Do you buy into that at all? Does it have meaning to you personally? Do you feel I'm doing something that's empowering to people, or this is a political act when I listen to this, or play this, or promote it, or tell people about it?
No, I don't believe that.
Okay.
No, I'm much more fond of it because I like it.
Right. Okay.
And actually, I tend to gravitate in a certain way away from the more overtly political songs.
Okay. Sure.
My own personal taste.
Right.
But what I do gravitate towards, and what I'm interested in, is there's a whole part of folk music of enabling people to make their own music.
Mm-hmm.
That a big part of what I think makes traditional music traditional is more participatory than perhaps what you might think of as a singer-songwriter.
Right. Okay, so you're saying Participatory stuff has more of a traditional air to it.
I think so.
Okay. Okay.
There are those who would disagree with me.
Right. And now when I think of this, getting back to this argument of folk music is something that's somehow inherently political because of its springing from the roots or from the common people, I often think that if you want to buy into that, it's in some way it can be political on both ends of the spectrum. People usually think of it as political on the left side of the spectrum because it's sort of, it's an anti-capitalist, do-your-own tool, that type of thing. But there's a whole other sense of it in which it is, many people use it to promote values that in the current climate are seen as quite conservative. Yeah. Well, I mean, I find it. I just find it interesting. People look at it as promoting. Do you know Mark Wilson at all? Produces records for Rounder. Okay.
I don't think I know him.
Okay. Anyway, pardon me?
Do I know him?
I have no idea.
Which records?
He produces purely traditional records for Rounder. They have what they are currently calling the North American Traditions series, and you can see that if you were to check Rounder.com, is really a collection of many records they've put out over the years that they never gave a label to. They're now trying to sell them because they had some success with the Lomax series, and they're gathering them together and giving them a label called the North American Tradition series. Mark is a philosophy.
Are they all compilation things?
No. They're all. They are all. Most of them are not compilation things, although some are. He's done a lot of Cape Breton fiddlers. He's done a lot of Kentucky banjo players. Some compilations of banjo playing from the Appalachian region. He tends to focus on Appalachia and Cape Breton.
Okay.
He is. This is an avocation for him. He is a musician himself, but how he earns his money is as a philosophy faculty member at the University of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And he goes out and he produces records, and he's been producing records for Rounder for 30 years, since he met them. The Rounders, in their earliest days, I think before the label began, he befriended them in graduate school in Boston. And where was I going with this? Mark tends to write the liner notes for his records. He doesn't always. But in his notes, he stresses values that would be seen as quite conservative, I think, in the ridiculous political debates that roll across the spectrum nowadays. Although I think he talks about, the meaning of this music to community. He talks a lot about family connections among the musicians and the music.
And it's true, and that's all accurate.
Yeah.
I mean, all right, you want the best example?
Go ahead.
You can go meet him yourself, if you have not done so already. The absolutely most traditional of all the traditional musicians that I know, that I have the honor and the privilege of actually knowing,
Right.
are the Coppers.
Okay, yeah.
From England.
Mm-hmm.
Here at the family, and absolutely everything they promote is exactly the sort of family values which you were just talking about.
Right.
That's their whole life. They've been doing, their family's been doing it for 200 years.
Yeah.
It doesn't get more traditional than the Coppers.
Right. Yeah. Now, as the Alliance, they've got to be aware of the fact that as an institution, and I know you don't want to talk about board discussions, so I want to get at this in a way that I get at what you think or what you've picked up from members, but the Alliance has got to be aware of the political charge in the discussion of folk music. Does it consciously avoid a slant on the political spectrum? Does it feel it has to stay away from that? Does it feel it's sometimes getting pulled in one direction or the other in terms of political debates?
Well, you asked several questions.
Yeah.
What do I think the Alliance feel? I don't know.
Okay.
I am sure that there are Alliance members who feel that it should be pulled some way or another and that have a very political view of it, and there are others who don't.
Mm-hmm. What do you feel?
I think. What do I feel? Do I feel that folk music should have a political slant?
I guess does the how does the alliance tread the politically charged nature of folk music? Does it meet it head on? Does it become a political organization? Well, it is a political organization in certain sense, as an advocacy group.
Yeah, I mean, it does advocating.
Yeah.
You know, but it does it on certain policies. Is it conservative or is it liberal? I don't know.
Right.
I don't think it thinks of itself in that way. It thinks of itself along policies that are aligned with its mission statement.
Okay.
And that, I have to say, that the organization, I think, is actually amazingly good, much better than most organizations about hewing to matters of purpose and matters of mission.
Okay.
And that if you look at the mission statement, there is a comment about promoting, I forget exactly, I couldn't quote it word for word, but there's the thing about promoting diversity and all of the multicultural aspects of folk music.
I believe, yeah, I recall it. I haven't read it.
Well, I should remember, Jeff and I basically wrote it.
Okay, Jeff Warner or Davis?
Jeff Warner.
Okay.
I basically wrote it. It was a long discussion at a board meeting, and essentially we distilled what was a day's worth of board discussion.
Okay.
Into what is now the mission statement.
Okay.
But if you look at the mission statement, and if you look at the print, the goals, the 5 principles or whatever, there's 5 areas of concentration. There's networking, and there's advocacy, there's education.
Mm-hmm.
That certainly all of those have a political aspect.
Sure.
But if you think of it as being promoting particular political ideas or particular political candidates in the United States.
Oh, no. Yeah.
But there's a viewpoint that every action is a political action.
Right.
Even not taking action is a political action.
Mm-hmm. Well, certainly any promotion of the idea of multiculturalism is a political action, because there remain people, and I've read political statements to this effect in recent debates, who subscribe to the idea that that's a balkanization of the U.S. and we are indeed a melting pot, or whatever you want to call us, a fondue pot, what have you. But everything forms, the gelatinous mass that creates this new thing.
As long as it matches my ethnicity.
Right. All right. So you don't think it's too realistic. But, multiculturalism is a political statement of a sort.
Yeah.
And in some circles it's quite charged. Among the English-only advocates in California, that's a hot issue. I mentioned that because I came from there for just a few years ago. They think multiculturalism is
a bad thing.
A bad thing. It's destroying the nation. So certainly, multiculturalism, I guess, is a political statement, and it goes back to the earliest days of folklore as a discipline, long before the programs. I mean, back to the 19th century. But I don't know. We go into areas that neither of us are expert in. We just have opinions.
Right.
Have you seen disdain for singer-songwriters in the alliance? And I'm kind of wrapping up here. If you want to get, I don't want you to attribute this to anybody, but
it depends. What do you mean by in the folk alliance? There's a
among the membership. I don't mean in the board or
Yeah. I mean,
I'm wondering what motivates this. Randy, a good friend of mine, in the traditional peer group meeting, said something to the effect of, "I'm not here talking about how we have to save the souls of singer-songwriters." It's kind of a ridiculous. It's kind of a ridiculous statement, but
I could hear Randy saying that.
Right, he did. And what if you've picked up anything? And I'm asking for help here because I don't always understand this. Jody Stecker, a great traditional musician, even though he's from Brooklyn or wherever, whom I respect a lot, helped clarify thoughts for me one time greatly when in a small group setting he said, what's wrong with singer-songwriters? And I thought that was great because it's coming from a guy who, has mastered traditional styles in many respects. But
there are those in the folk. There are those members. See, the problem is the folk alliance is not monolithic.
right,
It's anything but.
okay,
One of the beauties of the folk alliance is that you can't pin it down.
mm-hmm.
You can't define it, and you're going to find all opinions in it. That's one of the most fun things about it.
And I guess what I'm trying to get here is,
But anyway, to
Yeah.
answer your question explicitly, there are those who don't think very much of singer-songwriters, not realizing that all their folk heroes were singer-songwriters at one time. If Woody Guthrie was a singer-songwriter, who was?
right, and let's move this away from the folk alliance because I'm not, really what I'm doing here is I'm asking you, as someone who maybe has heard things that I haven't heard, can plug in some new ideas to me. What motivates this concern? As you understand it in the things you've heard, what do people think is wrong with singer-songwriters? Answer, Jody. That's what's bad about them. They write bad songs. Okay, a lot of them do. Is that what?
I mean, there are those who don't consider them very interesting because they're you can look at them as having a very shallow. As you said that you and Randy were talking about going to hear songs of personal indulgence.
Right.
There are those singer-songwriters who only can write things through their narrow viewpoint of what's the rest of the world, and that they don't really think much about what's going on in the world.
Okay.
If it hasn't happened to them, it hasn't happened.
All right.
There are other singer-songwriters who are very, very good who don't do it that way. And even some of the people who disdain singer-songwriters will grudgingly respect other people who they don't think of as singer-songwriters who in fact are singer-songwriters.
Right. I mean, what I'm hearing
I'll
is.
give an example of I can name some historically.
Go ahead. And.
Take your Phil Oakes
Mm-hmm.
and your Woody Guthries of the world.
Okay.
Your Pete Seegers.
Mm-hmm.
If they are singer-songwriters, who are?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And contemporary guys, John McCutcheon,
Right. Okay.
Cy Khan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The David Roth,
Mm-hmm.
Lucy Kaplansky. In a way, there's so many people that my